G'day everyone and welcome back to Aussie Down Under. Today we're talking about something that affects pretty much every single household in this country: interest rates, inflation, and the very real possibility that the Reserve Bank of Australia is about to hike rates for the third time this year. The decision drops next Tuesday, and the data we got yesterday sets the stage. So if you've been watching your grocery bill creep up, your fuel costs explode, or your mortgage repayments climb month after month, this is the story behind all of it. Let's get into it. Yesterday, the Australian Bureau of Statistics released the inflation figures for the first quarter of 2026. The headline number was 4.09%. That's the rate at which prices have risen across the economy compared to a year ago, and it's the highest reading we've seen in more than 2 years. Now, technically, that number came in slightly below what economists were expecting. They had penciled in something closer to 4.2%, but before anyone celebrates a small win, let me put it in perspective. The Reserve Bank's target band is 2 to 3%. We are sitting at over 4, and the monthly figure for March alone clocked in at 4.6%, the highest single month reading since Australia started publishing monthly inflation data back in 2025. So where is all this price pressure coming from? 3 areas are doing most of the damage: housing, transport, and food. Housing costs continue to climb because rents are still rising in every major capital, and construction costs haven't come down. Transport is the obvious one. Fuel prices have stayed elevated, thanks to the ongoing war in the Middle East, which has been pushing global oil prices up since it kicked off earlier this year. And food is following closely behind, partly because higher diesel costs make everything more expensive to ship, and partly because of weather and supply issues in Australian agriculture. Now, to understand why the Reserve Bank is in such an awkward position, you need a quick recap of what's happened over the last 18 months. Through 2024, the RBA held the cash rate steady at 4.35% for a long stretch. Then, in 2025, with inflation appearing to ease, they delivered 3 rate cuts in a row in February, May, and August, bringing the cash rate all the way down to 3.6%. The thinking at the time was that inflation was on its way back to target, and households needed a bit of relief. Mortgage holders started breathing again. Some economists were even talking about further cuts coming, but that didn't last. By late 2025, inflation started picking up again. Then, in early 2026, the war in Iran sent oil prices through the roof, and Australian fuel costs followed. The RBA suddenly found itself in reverse gear. In February, they delivered the first rate hike since November 2023. Then they did it again the following month. The cash rate is now back up at 4.10%, and importantly, that second hike passed by a 5-4 vote on the Monetary Policy Board. So even the RBA itself is genuinely divided on how aggressive to be. This brings us to next Tuesday, May the 5th. The board meets at 2:30 p.m. Sydney time, and the question on every economist's mind is whether they'll deliver a third consecutive hike. Right now, the major banks are betting yes. Commonwealth Bank says they're expecting another 25 basis point rise, taking the cash rate to 4.35%. National Australia Bank has said the same. Their reasoning is simple. Inflation isn't coming down fast enough. The labour market is still relatively strong, and the longer the RBA waits, the more entrenched these price pressures become. But here's where I want to give you my honest take, because I think the story is more complicated than the headlines suggest. The RBA itself is now forecasting that trimmed mean inflation, which is their preferred underlying measure, will hit 3.7% for the year to June. That's been revised up from 3.2%, and they don't expect inflation to return to the middle of their target band until mid-2028. Read that again, mid-2028. That means whatever the RBA does next week, this is not a problem that gets fixed in a few months. We are looking at years of higher rates, higher prices, and higher pressure on Australian households. What does that actually mean for ordinary people? Let me put it in concrete terms. For every 0.25% increase in the cash rate, your borrowing capacity drops by roughly $25,000 if you're trying to buy a home. So if rates go up again on Tuesday, that's another $25,000 lopped off what banks will lend you. For people already holding a mortgage, the impact is on monthly repayments. A typical Australian home loan of around $600,000 sees repayments rise by roughly $90 a month for every 25 basis point hike. That doesn't sound like much on its own, but stack it on top of the previous hikes this year, and the cumulative bill is becoming genuinely painful. And then there's the broader economic picture. The RBA's Deputy Governor, Andrew Hauser, recently used the word I don't think Australians have heard from a central banker in a long time: nightmare. He was describing the scenario where inflation stays high, while economic growth weakens at the same time. That's stagflation, and it's the worst possible outcome for any central bank, because the usual playbook stops working. Cut rates and inflation gets worse. Hike rates and the economy slows further. Right now, Australia is dancing on the edge of that scenario, and the Iran war is the wild card that could push us over. So what should you actually take away from all of this? I'm not a financial advisor, and you should always speak to one for your specific situation. But here are the facts as they stand today. If you have a variable rate mortgage, expect your repayments to keep climbing in 2026. If you're trying to buy your first home, your borrowing power is shrinking. If you have savings in the bank, you're probably finally getting a decent interest rate, which is one rare upside. And if you're a renter, you're caught in the middle. Rents keep rising because investors are passing on their higher mortgage costs, and your wages probably aren't keeping up. The bigger picture here is that Australia's economic comfort zone is over for the foreseeable future. The cheap money era of the early 2020s isn't coming back anytime soon, and the Reserve Bank has basically told us we're in for a long road. Tuesday's decision is just the next chapter in a story that's going to define the rest of this year and beyond. So are you feeling the squeeze right now? Mortgage, rent, fuel, groceries? Where is it hitting hardest for you? Drop it in the comments. I genuinely want to hear what's happening on the ground. Like and subscribe for more Australian news broken down simply. See you in the next one.